John 15:1 through 15:3. I am the truthful scroll, and my speak complete man is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, back up and speak against. And every that beareth fruit, prune it, that it may bring forth more fruit. Now ye are clear through the word which I have spoken unto you. Are we clear about this? Well, there are some things in here that may not seem familiar to you because I had gone back and completed the proper translations, but there's still a word here that I didn't translate in there. And that word would be husbandman. What's a husbandman? Well, according to this, that word came from the Greek word G1092. And the Greek word G1092 is gaha or gos. Gaha or gos. Now, as you may or may not know, I do know that the culture that put together these writings were a Greek Hebrew culture. That means they were mixed together. They were blended together. They were a duality that worked together. And in some of the writings, I've discovered that some of these words were a blending of the Greek and the Hebrew together, which in many cases would confuse somebody who didn't know such a thing, and maybe even the people who did the translations as time went on didn't understand what was going on, that when they were translating Greek scriptures, they didn't realize that there were Hebrew words mixed in there. Now, they were probably mixed in there because of the inference that happens with those words. Those words could be considered pretty insightful in some cases. And it also basically a way to hide the words so that they can be passed on for future use. A code, so to speak. So the husbandman, G1092, Gaha or Gos, I'm claiming is a composite of 3 Hebrew words. The first one is the Gaha, the second one is the Or, and the last one is the Gash, which you could pronounce it Gos, as the letters are the G, the I, and the SH. Now the I is actually the I like this, but that I is commonly pronounced as an O sound. So that would be Gos, which is the same as the 3 syllables that make up the Greek word. Now, the translation of those 3 different words is, the first one, the Ga, means proud. The Or means rise up. And the Gos means agitate violently, like an earthquake, to shake and move and agitate really violently. Now, when I say violently, I don't mean like a violent uprising against individuals where there's bloodshed. That isn't the type of violence I'm talking about. I'm talking about shaking the very foundations of the structures. And this was also talking about in other scriptures where Jesus had mentioned that no stone will remain on the temple. Basically is what it was, that every stone will be thrown down. But that was a metaphor, that was an allegory, meaning the very structure of the religion itself would be shaken up, agitated violently, tossed down like an earthquake would do, thrown away. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is, well, nowadays you don't know because the religious leaders have kept the important things hidden from you and just made some fluffy, ceremoniously, ritualistic type thing that people have fun with, that it's basically playtime social activity. And some people say, well, no, it's really not. It's hard work, and we got to follow the laws and the ordinance and the commandments and stuff like that, which can be very fine in and of itself until people find out what all those rules are. And when they find out what all those rules are, they find out the reason why Jesus would have said such a thing. Because there's some pretty horrible things, absolutely horrible things in that society. And that's why it did not succeed. Didn't succeed. And then when, even as time went on, the people, the so-called quote unquote Jewish people, were kicked out of 109 countries. 109 different countries didn't want anything to do with them. Kicked them out. Now people say, well, that's racism and blah, blah, blah. Well, you know something? When you find out what they're really about, you say, oh my gosh, any reasonable person wouldn't want them around. Now somebody say, well, you don't like our menorahs, and you don't like our stars, and you don't like our festivals that we have. Well, if you look back at the originations and the wicked and evilness that was involved in that religion and culture, damn straight people wouldn't like that. Instead, it's still covered up, it's whitewashed, it's shined over, when in reality, the Jewish people should be exposing. It shouldn't be my responsibility to be exposing the evil wickedness, which is the foundation that needed to be shaken up, tossed, and thrown down. How is it my responsibility, thousands of years after the fact, to point at something and say how evil and wicked it was? Why should I have to be doing that? Well, there's one reason why I do have to do that, is because the people who know more about this than I do refuse to do so. And instead they live in the state of cognitive dissonance because they know the end result would be to agitate violently and shake down to the very foundations. And that's what we're talking about by going back to the beginning, is the foundation. And if the foundation is no good, the rest of it is no good. Who cares? Who cares about people playing their dress-up games and having, some so-called worship time where they sing and they dance and they pray and that type of thing? Those things in and of itself can be very innocent. Those in and of itself can actually be helpful in some cases, because what we're talking about is hypnosis and self-hypnosis, which can be used for the good as equally as for the evil. But if you don't go back and address the evil will always return. And that's what people are stuck at. So what was Jesus saying? Jesus was saying, I am the true vine. Where is it? No, I'm sorry. I am the truthful scroll, the truthful writings. And my speak complete man, which should be you, means speak complete. That word came from the Greek word pater. Okay? And that Greek word pater is a transliteration of the name Peter. And as we know the story about Peter and how Peter renounced Jesus instead of announcing Jesus, we know how the story went. Jesus was murdered because of that. Now, what should take place is people should speak complete. Okay? The other translation of this word using the Hebrew symbols is speak covenant man. The Peter that we witnessed in the story, he was the speak covenant man. And even speaking that covenant, he broke the covenant. He made a covenant to Jesus that he would not denounce him. That's the way the writings show. Yet he did denounce him. So he was all about speaking covenants, even though He was about breaking covenants. I mean, we can look nowadays at the Jewish people. They do what's known as the Kol Nidre. And the Kol Nidre, they recite this whole thing, and it's about how that they're already planning ahead of time about lying and making covenants and promises they have no intention of keeping. Okay? That's what the Peter did. That's what the Apostle Peter did in the story. Now, as the symbols show, if he was true to his name, he would have spoke complete instead of speaking a covenant, and on top of it, not even going along with the covenant that he had. But these stories are all supposed to be for us to learn things. Now, start over again. John 15:1. I am the truthful scroll, the true writings, and my speak complete man is the husbandman. And we describe what the husbandman is. The husbandman is proud to rise up and agitate violently. The Peter of the Old Testament, he wasn't proud. He didn't speak up because he knew it was going to agitate violently. And he didn't want to be a part of it for obvious reasons. It's pretty obvious. But he certainly shouldn't have made a promise to Jesus on something that he should have darn well known he could not keep. Some people believe whether the story is really true or it's just something for us to learn from. Doesn't matter. Either way, whether it was true or not true, we can still learn from it. And that's what these writings are supposed to be about. The truthful writings, the true writings, the real meanings. The real meanings would be the truthful writings, which is far different than what we read in the English language today. And I'm not saying by any means to promote the wickedness and evilness that are in these writings, because the writings of the Bible are full of wicked and evil things that a bunch of people made pretend that those wicked and evil things were okay and good and fine. And that's the problem. That's what has to be dealt with. That's what has been covered over, and that's what has to be exposed. And it has to be agitated violently. There's a lot of things that are going on in society that the same thing has to be done to, and it's for the same very reason, is the power structure, the foundation, the structure that rules over the people and rules over the people of the world. You can look at it at your local level and you'll find it. You can look at it at your federal level, you can find it. You can look at it at the global level and you will find it. If you want to open up your eyes, if you want to be truthful. But the very same thing has to happen. And it tells you right here what has to happen. It says, every branch in me that beareth not fruit, back up and speak against it. That means stop. Back up. Go backwards. Go back in the writings. Go back in the meanings. Go back in what's going on, the situation. Back up. Take a look at it and speak against it. And every that beareth fruit, prune it. Why do you have to say something and say, hey, that's bearing fruit, we'll just prune it and clip it a little bit? Because it has all that bad stuff still in it. You got to get rid of the bad. See, the way things have gone through a period of time here in the translations, they never really got rid of the bad. They glossed it over. They glossed it over, and it's still there. That's why you have to go back to the truthful scroll, the truthful writings. You know, there's one thing about these Hebrew writings that don't really change. And the thing is, if you go back and you look at the pictograph forms, there's a lot of understanding you can gain from them. Because pictures are nouns, and any verbs that are used have to be associated with the noun. So it's always the character. And it's a really, I don't know, you can call it fantastic choice of pictures, a perfect choice of pictures, a true choice of writings and pictures and scrolls that we use. The difference is, and it is known, when somebody interprets something, if they're interpreting it in a positive manner or a negative manner, because it's on the interpreter on how the interpretations are coming forward. See, people don't have any responsibility in the writings that they have now. There were pictographs taken. Those pictographs were turned into Paleo-Hebrew, and the Paleo-Hebrew script was turned into the modern Hebrew script, and the modern Hebrew script got turned into English script, essentially. I mean, there was a variation of it where there was Hittite language and Anglo-Saxon language and all the different languages, right? But all the responsibility was taken out of it when the pictures were eliminated. Because with the pictures, it's obvious the responsibility of the translator when they're doing the translating. It's obvious. Because everybody can look at a bull's head and learn the different meanings of a bull's head. Everybody can look at the tent footprint and learn the different meanings of the tent footprint. They can learn whether the positive meaning or negative meanings being used. Whatever the other pictographs are, the spirit, the wad, the stick, the door, the wall, the basket, the arm, the palm blessing, the staff, all of it. And they're pictures, they're nouns, they are what they are. And that's where the translators come in, and it may tell a lot more about the translator than it does the original writings in some cases. But remember, when these things were changed, and the types of writing was changed, and the vowel pointers were added, and the scribe could basically translate and use the same letters or symbols, but change the vowel pointer, which would change the meaning. And then diction meaning that came forth out of everything is different. Because diction meaning, you got a legal diction, which is the diction meaning that was back then. It was a word or a symbol had a meaning because we said so. That's a legal meaning. That's like any government. There's a legal meaning because the government says so. Then there's a common diction meaning, which is the common usage amongst man. Well, if you're following the government and following the law and behaving like these people behaved, and they get the Pharisees and those type of legalistic people joining and participating in the religious aspect would want to take the legalistic view. And that's how the language was groomed. But that's how the original writings before such a time were changed and altered. So all the information that's in there is hidden. I hope I didn't go too far off track. This video took longer than I was anticipating.